Next demo. What? Here's my little station right here. That's the station. You do like this. Instructor only. Wonderful world of flexbox. 6:30. All right. Sorry. All right. All right. So today we're going to, I'm going to go through a demo of the display property, and then we'll take a look at the homework, which was just to build one of those navs, and then we'll kind of build the other navigation out as well. Let me zoom in on this. We'll build out the second navigation. One nav was using navs and anchors, and the other nav was using nav, UL, LIs and anchors in that design, right? So we'll just build that out. That won't take too long to build, but I do have a demo on block, inline, inline block, so I can really convey that. Then we'll apply semantic elements themselves to specific layouts. We're going to be working with the layouts for today and next week also, the same layouts. And then I will introduce you to the wonderful world of flexbox, where even though you have to know this, like display property, you do have to know. There's certain things with the introduction of new, technology in CSS or semantic elements that some of the old stuff just kind of goes to the wayside. You don't use it anymore. There's a technology called floats. That's also a property, and I really won't cover that because it's not heavily used anymore in new designs. It's out there in like old designs. There's times to use it, but at some point in time, I have to say, if I introduce flexbox and I'm introducing grid also, which is the hottest thing to work with for layouts, I gotta take something out. I can't just keep teaching everything. Otherwise, you're never gonna get good at anything. I'm gonna be like, here's floats, move on to flexbox, move on to grid, and you're just gonna be like, well, when do we ever get to really work with something? So this is important because this is still something you can work with, but a lot of the times, you're gonna opt to use flexbox to do things, which changes these properties altogether. So even though it's like, I want this to act a certain way, the minute I turn on flexbox, those things act flexboxy anyway. And I always try now to do some of my layouts using flexbox. I always kind of default to doing this. So you'll see it today, because we're gonna take the same nav. If you did it for homework, you would have applied it. You'll apply it again using the ULLI, and then you will turn on flexbox and you'll be like, this thing was crazy easy. Like all you had to do is flip this button, turn on that property, and everything positioned itself. That's amazing. I want to do that. So that's what we're going to be doing. Before I do that, I was just going to go through some of just the questions in the exit to get feedback. Just make sure, I look at it every day. I've reached out to a few people too. I get some feedback. You can be as terse with me as you want. I don't take it personal. And whatever you say, I listen to it because you paid for the class and you want an experience. So I will reach out and ask for just insight. Hey, I saw you wrote this. Kind of tell me what you're feeling. I want to see if I can better understand it to improve. First, I'll just do the questions. Still not fully grasping the space between elements in the nav. Not sure that's a question, but we'll take a look at it. Not always sure how to target elements to style in CSS. We'll be focusing in on that today also when I do the display demo. We're going to target elements using just the element name, using classes, and using something also. I'm going to introduce a pseudo class to target perhaps the position of the elements. Is it the first element in this container? Is it the last element? Is it the middle element? We can actually use properties about the thing. How to fully organize my divs and containers with the proper names and proper specificity so that it looks clean and is easy for others to understand. That's important, right? One comment is challenging to see the screen from the back of the room, but then moving forward, can anything be done to contrast? I'll try to do some contrast, and I'll try to blow up what I have on the screen. If there's a certain color in the code pen that works better, I'll try to do that. I'm willing to do whatever. Just some glows here. Keep what you're doing. I appreciate the teaching style. Class was great. Awesome. I'm not picking and choosing like, oh my God, I'm amazing. Because it's not all, but I got some bros here too, so don't worry about it. I feel like being exposed to Emmett and shorthand is the most important thing we learned today. Everything was way more detailed than I expected, and I needed it. I understand what was happening in the box model, but I have having trouble implementing it on the relaxer homework. This cleared up a lot of things, and I was struggling. So I tried to spend last class to be as detailed as I could in this thing because I knew the stuff that we did yesterday, you were going to use it for your relaxer. So now that you have this new understanding, maybe you go back to relaxer and finish it or implement additional sections to it. And reach out to me too. Do you have a question? Writing out the paths in CSS elements help visualize more what style is being applied to each element. I went out of my way to do div.container space div.this, right? And I did that for a reason. We're going to keep doing it for a few more classes, and then we'll go back. I found the descriptions and how to target elements very helpful, and the practice writing them out in the code, and kind of like these two, I would assume are the same. So we're going to keep doing that. At a certain point in time, we're not going to be that excessive. There's going to be points in time where I'm just going to like just do that dot wrapper or just dot container, right? And depending on the nesting structure that you have, I may have 100 wrappers on my page, and I want to target just a wrapper that's nested in something else that's nested just in the header. So I'm going to use the header to say header and then the thing inside of it versus carte blanche all wrappers because then you hit everything. And it just grows. It was too bad we did not get to the labs in class. Yeah, I hate teaching a class and I don't get to the labs. Like that really bothers me. And doing the Mars rebuild, spent a lot of time. I just felt like I needed to keep going and build this thing out so you had one thing to kind of work with. So we didn't really hit the labs, and I try not to do that. Only because I wasn't teaching the other 2 weeks, and this is something I probably would have built last week as a code along. I think automating away certain HTML patterns could be lucrative at some point in time. My development experience in 2 weeks into this, I was disappointed that the city instructor resorted to teaching us Emmett. Now, once again, I don't take anything personal. And I want you to see, like, I see this. I'm exposing you to comments. I don't say who said what. Doesn't really matter. I also show something like this because there's another comment that says, hey, the best thing that I learned was Emmett. So when I teach a class, I have so many people that one person likes what I did and the other person would be like, no, I wish we didn't do that. So I have to find the balance between that. And I choose the things that I do because 2 weeks into the class, where this is our 3rd week, I want you to be efficient writing code. I don't want to troubleshoot. I typed out the div and I forgot the closing thing and like I don't have the greater than sign and things aren't nested. I don't want to spend time doing these small little one-offs. So using Emmett means you can build a structure super quick. Boom, boom, boom. Got it done, right? That's the intent. The intent is for you to like build something out really quickly and then apply CSS. And once we get to JavaScript, you're not going to want to spend time like writing anything out. You're going to want to have it done. Even like want somebody to give it to you so you don't have to write out the structure. Okay, so that's that. That was the questions feedback. Boop. All right, so I'm going to go to the display demo. Let's do that first. And then I can maybe take a look at some of the assignments if anybody wanted to send me. All right, there's the code pen, slacked it out, have the code pen. I will zoom in on this, obviously, because this is really tiny. All right, so I'm hoping that that helps a little bit. Okay, so everyone got it? Open it up, fork it. This is a code along. If you don't want to code along, you want to watch, that's fine. I'm going to save the solution. You'll have the solution. No biggie. So what I have here is these are just going to be examples of these 3, and I'm going to take some notes. I'll add it in here. So, you know, if you want to write notes, write notes. I always find like doing stuff is more important than like writing some notes that you're never going to read at some point in time. It's about building stuff. So, you know, if you really want to learn the material, spend the weekend rebuilding Relaxer. Draw Relaxer, you know, and markers on your bathroom tiles or something and stare at it when you're in there. Whether you're brushing your teeth, stare at the thing. I'm telling you, these things work where you have to be constantly exposed to it. So examples of the display property, we have references here that are going to take you to, if we wanted to look more into it, W3 schools. Has anybody been to W3 schools? Or Brian must have showed W3 schools. If you do any research, this is the first place that I go, W3 schools, because it's the dumbed down version. Like MDN, Microsoft Development Network, is really like boxy and for scientists. Like, I don't think that way. I like going here because I just want to see the thing, do the thing, and then I know how to do it. Versus like reading all these instructions and like what this thing does. Tells me what it does, but it doesn't show me what it does. So I'm a show me what it does kind of person. So block level elements. I'm not going to stay. I just wanted to show you these links. They'll take you to W3 schools. We can take a look maybe in a little bit, but I'm going to stay focused on implementing it so you actually see it, right? So what I have is this. This is the structure that I have. So let me just kind of maybe space it out. Actually, I want to add something to space it out. So I have a container class, or a div with a container class. One is block, a class of container. One's specifically inline, another one container with inline block. They all have boxes. We'll target each one of those containers very specifically. And we'll target all the containers using the class as well. And so we're going to take a look at these things. So these are all divs, Okay, so display block. Now I want to create some space between these. And if I do this in the HTML, this doesn't really create any space between them. Let me just do this. Right? There's no visual space. If I want to create space using an element, I could just do this, BR, and it should create a space. See the space? Right, I'm just, once again, taking the elements that I know and visualizing them. So if I put a break there, I put another BR, and I could just do BR tab. Once again, opening and closing. So that's all I'm doing. I'm just saving it. I'm creating distance between them so we could clearly distinguish them, right? The other way to clearly distinguish things would be to add, border around everything, right? And I've always kind of pushed adding border around everything. I don't really want to add border around these because then it makes it look ugly. So I don't want to do that. So I have a container element here, and I'm just going to add a border there. So border, 1 pixel solid, and it should put borders around these elements. Okay? That's it. I'm going to save it. So what we can see right now is that these two boxes look the same, and this one looks much less in height, right? Doesn't have as much height. Okay, so there's no CSS added besides the thing that we just added, right? There's nothing else here, just that, okay? And if I just take a look in here, I want to kind of see what's happening. And do I have, so what's the difference between the top box and the middle box? Can anybody tell me the elements that are in the middle box, how are they different? They're spans, okay? So natively, some elements behave a certain way, and spans behave a certain way. You already kind of know that, right? Spans behave a certain way. So where we're going to go is for the div box right here, right? We are going to talk about the display property for this, because this is a block. I'm going to leave it as a block level element. So we're just going to leave it as a block, and you see it behave like a block. And really, we're not going to do much with it. We'll take a look at the span. It's an inline. We'll describe what the inline is and what it does, and then we'll talk about this inline block, which is the best of kind of, I guess, both worlds of these things. So what about a block level element? So I'm just going to take some notes here. What is a block level element, right? A block level element takes up the full width. We learned that the other day. It takes up the full width. Whether it has content or not, it takes up the full width. It won't take up the height, okay? So its height, height can, or height by default, is defined by content, unless you set it. Okay? Everyone's taking notes, but I'm taking the notes right here. You can just watch. So if we wanted to give these boxes, here's this div box, and I'm specifically targeting the boxes inside of this container block box. And anyone want to tell me the space between this? Why is there no space here and there's a space there? Like I'm just drilling it in. Yeah, it's a child. This is a class that belongs to the div. It's assigned to the div. So these two belong together. And this space represents that box is a child of that, right? Once again, we don't need to have div here. I could get rid of this, but later on, when we get to semantic elements, and there's lots of semantic elements, maybe I have an article and an aside, and I have all these things, and the same class is assigned to those specific elements, preceding them with the element name might help us distinguish which element we're actually targeting. So I have this box. I'm just going to give it, let's give it a width. I'm going to say, I don't know, 50 pixels. Nothing really changed, right? Or did it? I don't know. What if I did this? Oh, I'm going to go to developer tools. I always live in like developer tools, right? So what if I do this? Before I do that, I'm going to comment that out just so that you can see something. If I go here and I highlight the elements, it clearly takes up the full width. Blue represents what in the box model? If I ever wanted to know, I go to this little computed tab and content. So see the colors in this computed? The computed blue represents content, green is padding, border represents here is orange, and then margin is light orange, margin is kind of like that darker. If you're ever curious the dimensions of an element, just highlight it, go here, and you'll be able to see what is what. That's key, okay? So I go here, I'm like, blue means content. All right, cool, the whole thing. So what happens if I do go to CSS and I undo this and I let that go, just save it, and I highlight it again? What happened? Yeah, it shrunk to the width that I defined it. And what is this? That's margin, right? So it still takes up the full horizontal. It has not let go of this space. It says, this whole thing is mine, and even though you want me to be this big, I still don't share any space. Like, that's the rest of my space. I take this exact space, okay? If we maybe give it a, oh, you need that. I'll give it a height. Just once again, we can define 50 pixels, 50 colon pixels, not semicolon, right? Now the box is grown in size, okay, in height. And I'm just going to do this so we can kind of distinguish these things. Border, 1 pixel, maybe solid blue, so we can clearly see the colors, all right? Most of the elements that you're going to work with behave like this. I'm going to say 90%, 95% of the HTML elements or all block level elements, this is how they behave. Not a lot of magic with these elements. It's really when you start working with the other ones where things, may trip you up. So that's easy enough, right? That's block. We don't really have to do anything more. I just wanted to show that these are block, and they're all taking up the same amount of width and height, and they dominate on that. And what if we wanted to center them? Does anybody remember? If I wanted to center those block level elements that have been defined a width, what do? Yeah, margin, 0, auto, that centers them. Okay, so centering elements, easy enough, right? And if we wanted to center the text, we could do text align, center, and text would be centered too. Just get used to that. Once again, once I get to flexbox, flexbox has other properties. I don't use text align center anymore. I may not even use margin zero auto once I turn on flexbox. So even though these things are key, and you still have to know them because there's a lot of times you're not using flexbox, but once you turn it on, you're like, welcome to the wonderful world of flexbox. And I meant that because you will enjoy using it. Takes a little time, but you will enjoy using it. So let's move on to inline elements, right? What kind of defines an inline element? All right, so I'll just go up here once again with my notes to talk about an inline element. Well, what defines an inline element? Inline elements take up only the space defined by its content. That's it. And how do we know that? Well, I see that these things are sitting next to each other, right? And so I'm gonna just kind of go down to the inline box and just, maybe we'll do another border, 1 pixel, maybe solid red, so we can see red. We also see, I did point out that inline elements do this wacky, put a space between the elements. That's actually coming. That space right here is coming from the HTML. It's coming from these elements. If I don't do this, I'm just saying, if I wanted them to get rid of that space, would that work? Do you see how the space is gone now? So somehow those inline elements register the space in here as a space here. It's just a wacky thing. I didn't, create HTML. That's just the way it is, right? There's other ways to get rid of it. And no one really writes, stuff like this. You don't really put spans like that. It's hard to read. Everyone likes seeing content kind of vertical. Just makes it easier to read than seeing rows and rows of spans. So we don't really care about that space right now. But you know how to fix it. There's other ways to fix it. What else about this? Well, it's what if I tried to give it the same width and height? So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to copy the width and height from the other ones. I don't want to have to do everything. I'm going to paste it here. And boop, nothing happens. Those spans did not grow in width nor height, which means when I go back to the notes, takes up only the space defined by its content. Cannot set width nor height. You can't set it. So know that when you choose this element, you can't define its width or a height. And I did say we could create, how do we create space? How could I make something grow in size? How could I do that? What did we learn last class? Yeah, so we could use, margin is to push away from something, and padding would be to kind of grow it internally, right? All right, so that being said, I'm gonna try to grow this thing. So I'm like, all right, that's cool. Assigning this doesn't work, so I'm just gonna comment this out because it really doesn't matter, right? We know that won't work. So I'm like, all right, cool. What if I do padding? All right, I'm gonna say maybe padding, I don't know, 20 pixels. So what happens? Did that meet your expectations of what you think would have happened? Get it? Where is the container? That's the parent, and this thing just shot right outside the parent, okay? So unless you know that that's what inline elements do, my assumption is you would have thought you would have pushed on the parent container and then created space in there, but it's bleeding out. So just know you can make the thing bigger, but it doesn't change the parent container. The parent container is like, I don't recognize your padding. You recognize it, I don't recognize it, I don't see it, okay? So if you had worked on the lab, right, was to create the nav with anchors, and you were like, I'm just gonna give the anchors padding. You might have did it, and it would probably just pushed back whatever container you put, and you're like, well, that's weird, why is that? So you might have solved that by doing what? If I wanted to keep these spans inside but grow the container, how would you resolve that? Do we need padding on these things at this point in time? No. We could keep the padding. We could, because once again, if I hover over a nav element, and the nav is large like this, when you hover over it, you want the whole block to kind of highlight, like a hover effect, right? I don't want to just have to hover just this thing. A lot of the times when you go to a nav and you hover this way, you see it. Something like, let me see, General Assembly, do they do it? Right? Like that. I don't want to have to hover over just the text. I want to hover just below it and dominate that whole space, right? They're doing it as LIs, anchors. So I'm going to go back here. So in order to fix this design, if that's really what I wanted the padding, then I'd have to do something where I'm going to target the container here, right, that has inline. So this inline container, and I don't have it defined here, so I probably want to do this, like, hey, div dot, maybe div dot inline, right? And then just do height, I don't know, I'm going to do 50 pixels maybe, and let's see. All right. 50 pixels, but the spans still sit above, like, we have to do something else to like vertically align it. This is just a pain in the ass, right? I mean, I gave it a height, and now the spans are, they're sitting where they're normally sitting at the very top. They didn't move to the middle, so I'd have to do something like vertical align to get them into the middle, okay? I think we could do that by doing this. Let me just try this. Line height, I think it's line height. What did I set it as? The height as, did I? Line box. Oh, line height there. Line height, actually not here. I'm gonna set it here. I don't know if this is gonna work, by the way. I know it works in some places. Line height, what did I say? 50 pixels, 50 pixels. Ah, look, centered the span. So you can vertically center the spans using line height, and I set the line height exactly to the height of the element. This is one technique of centering the text. And it looks like we would just have to do this a bit more. Maybe set this to 60. We get a little space. Maybe set this to 60. And now, boom, I got perfectly centered spans, right? That was the goal. If I added a hover to this thing, if I was to take this and just add a hover, just so that you could see, if I did this, and said colon hover, and I said, I don't know, background pink, maybe. If I hover over it, turns the whole background pink, okay? This is a pseudo class also, okay? A pseudo class affects a property of the item. So in this instance, the property is that we kind of hovered over, an action or a property. We hovered over it. That's an action, okay? So you can see now that it takes, and this is what we wanted, right? I want to go here, boom, and everything is highlighted. That's the ultimate effect, okay? So those are spans. The uniqueness of a span and inline element, there's only a handful of inline elements out there. Spans, images, image tags, yeah? No, it is a predefined property. Okay, both of these, block and inline, are predefined. And we can see the properties of an element. If I go to this span and I highlight the span, right? Boop. You see on the right-hand side, I have the computed. I'm just gonna zoom in maybe down here. Now I'm on the computed, and we can see like the different settings for it, right? If I go down further and I say show all, right here, it shows all of the properties that this element has. I'm just looking for, I don't see display, which is kind of weird that we don't see the display property. Should be there. I'm just really surprised that this span doesn't have it. It's kind of weird. Is it? Am I doing it? Why did, I must feel like I tripped this thing up, right? Did it just like split? Oh, that was weird. It's pushing it over there. I'm just gonna go back to it. I wanna see. That's our span. It should here have said display, and it didn't, so I'm a little, maybe I had another element chosen. So I'm just gonna go down to D's, display right here, okay? This represents the element's display properties, defaults to an inline property, okay? And I went to the computer. So if I highlight the original box, maybe the third box here, right? You know, I think something's happening. I have to go here and do it. If I highlight this, you see how the display turns to block? Display property block.
What if I change the names?
We are going to change the names. If you change the display property, you change the element to behave the other way. So that being said, we're going to do that with the block level element. So I'm going to show you what happens with these blocks. So I'm going to go down to the block. So I just want to say, like, here, these are the two things. Can't define the height, but we can add padding. Padding all around. That's supported. But what about margin? What about margin? Okay. Margin, only left and right apply. So if I wanted to create distance between these elements, more than this little tiny space there, I would go here. Oh, I'm sorry. I would go to the inline element, right? And I would say margin. I'm just going to put it with all of the properties that do work. Margin. And let's just say I just said 20 pixels all around. If I just hit 20 pixels, it didn't do 20 pixels all around. It only did 20 pixels on either side of it, right? That's 20 pixels. The margin here, the 20 pixels push against each other, right? So it's 40 pixels now distance between them, okay? Versus, you know, when we did margin, when we did the box up here, I said margin 0 auto because I didn't want it to have margin because I wanted to center it. But if I did want to give this margin, say margin, maybe I'm just going to do 5 pixels. Look, it's 5 pixels all around. Margin all around the things, right? Okay. And vertical margins collapse on top of each other. So these vertical margins would collapse on top of each other, okay? And you can see that, once again, if we went to developer tools, and I highlighted this element, you can see it's full margin, right? This is the full margin that surrounds it, which means these margins collapse on top of each other. Because if I surround this element, it looks like these margins are sharing the same space between each other, right? So vertical margins collapse on top of each other. Horizontal margins do not. They maintain their distance in space, okay? Which is why this element doesn't share anything with anyone else, because its margin's like, I dominate this whole thing. I think it's the next thing. Cool? All right, so now we're going to move on to this inline block level element. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to kind of grab the width and height. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to grab it because I want to give it some width and height. I don't want to have to type out everything. Width and height. Boom, I have it. I'm going to give it a border. Border maybe 1 pixel, solid, I don't know, orange maybe. With a nice dark color. Awesome. I want this thing to act like a span. So I can do this. Display inline. I just want you to say. Now it acts like the inline element. Okay? If I gave it I'm just going to do this over here. If I gave it margin, maybe once again, just 5 pixels. 5 pixels all around. Doesn't work. Only goes left and right, right? So again, if I gave it padding too, I'm just testing stuff. Padding, 10 pixels, it bleeds outside the box because it's acting like an inline element, right? I told it to behave like it's inline doesn't. So I'm like, all right, I don't want it to act like that. Maybe I want it to be the block level element it was. So I'm like, block, oh, snap, we're back, right? But that's its native property. I'm doing this so that when you get to JavaScript, I can target this element, and on some sort of user event, I can change it to be inline, and on some user events, if I want it to act like a block, I have to change it back to block or remove the inline. So a lot of the times, setting one property means you have to go back and manually set it to be the property that you want, okay? That's important to know. Now, I don't want it to be inline. I don't want it to be block. I want it to be inline block. Boop. An inline block is kind of the best of both worlds. It is a combination of block and inline where the elements can sit next to each other. The margins here seem to, unless I did the margins here, I did 5 pixels, and up here I had done 20 pixels. So if I do margin 20 pixels, we'll see it should create similar distance. There's more information in here, obviously, that's why it's bigger, but it creates the same distance, everything, they share the same space, okay? So if you wanted to, if I wanted to just get rid of margin and just have the padding, right? In order to deal with that issue with the nav, and the minute I realized like I did the padding and the thing bled out, I then just do display inline block and I get the effect that I want. I don't resort to doing this where I give the element the height. I'm like, all right, then I set the height and try to get that right setting. I don't do that. I give it a display inline block and then it acts like this. Okay, and these are properties you have to know because you're gonna see them all the time, everywhere. This is still a solid thing that you need to know, even though flexbox still changes things up. Cool. Feeling good about display property? Like I feel like this really kind of nails the display property. You have to play with it, obviously, in order to really kind of like internalize the display property. All right. So I'm going to do this. I don't know. Here's the nav. Topic nav. I'm just going to open up a code along here with that solution here, right? And I added the nav here to our Mars site. And I have it, right? Obviously, just adding the nav, did it work? I don't know, looks pretty decent, right? I'm just gonna go and see what we did here to the header. All right, here's my anchor tag. I'm just taking a look and seeing what I did. Here's the nav. Let me see, the nav just has text align right, padding, and the anchor tags, border, padding, right? So what I did was I created some space with the elements here. Let me see. I think I have to zoom out a little bit. I think it's too much. Okay. And the elements seam, the anchor tags, have padding 10 pixels, and I gave them a border, right? So those 10 pixels, and then I went to the nav, and I was like, all right, nav, I'm giving you some padding also, 10 pixels. And so I compensate, right? The element has 10 pixels of padding, top and bottom, that does, and it looks like it works, right? At least for this, it looks like it works. I got it positioned to the right by doing text align right. If I move this, it defaults to the left, and I can move it to the right. A lot of the times, it's always to the right, and then you have like a logo over here. I mean, that's just the natural style of things, right? So I was just gonna show, let me see. Yeah, yes, sweet. So I can show Maria. Show your nav. All right. So Maria implemented the nav with the anchors, right? This is the nav with the anchors. Went out of her way to put the logo. And let's just take a look and see what was done. Now we can always take a look here. Once again, I love developer tools. That's just where I want to be. So I go here, I take a look at the element, and I see, that's the HTML, here's the element, here's the nav. Let's just take a look and see. For the nav, just background color and a padding, 0.20 pixels, right? So you're giving it padding, right? Top and bottom, so when you shorthand it, this padding is top and bottom, and this value is left and right. So if you ever see a single value, the first number represents top and bottom, the second represents left and right. And you'll see that a lot, unless you're targeting like padding top or padding bottom. Usually that's something. I'm gonna go into it, see the anchor tag, and let's just see that the anchor tag, oh, you changed it to display inline block. Okay, so if it was, that's what it would look like without it, right? So without display inline block, that's what it would look like, right? So that's not how we want it to look, so you could turn on inline block. Now that was before you knew about inline block, right? That's what you would need to have done with the elements, right? Otherwise, you would have done it the other way, okay? Did anybody else work on this? Anybody did, shoot it to me. I just kind of want to show it. Anybody did? Once again, it was just, it's not a mandatory homework. It's because we didn't get to the lab, and I wanted you to like have something to work on. This is something you like kind of want to pursue as a career. Then you're going to be working on this stuff every chance you get. And if it's just like, hey, I'm just kind of curious, then you don't have to do it. So no one sent it to me. I'll just assume no one wants to share. No biggie. I won't take it personal. So let's do this. I want to give you a shot at doing the other one. So here it is. Now that you know how the elements behave, right? Your turn is to implement it. I just slacked it out. So for, oh wait. Yeah. So here, let me just change, this is not the design, so I'm just gonna copy this and change the text that I have here because it's not doing the nav. It is doing the nav anchor, bloop, 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 bam. All right, so I'm saving it. All right. So I want you to implement this navigation, right? If you did the other one, shouldn't be so hard. And I want you to apply the nav using that structure. You don't have anything. I give you nothing. So in the HTML, you have to add your code there. And then in the CSS, you have to add your CSS. This is an all you exercise. You build the thing. You can use Emmet to do it. Okay? If you did want to use Emmet to do it, Emmet would be something like this. Nav, just zoom in a little bit. Nav greater than sign UL greater than sign LI greater than sign anchor, and I would have one anchor. Okay? If I wanted to have multiple anchors, I'm just going to give it some text here. I don't know, click home. I'm just going to give it some text, and I'm going to say something like this. Once again, just showing it to you. You don't have to do it. Times 5, and if I do this, I have 5 elements. Okay? I'm going to go back. I'm just going to comment that out so that you see it. If you want to use it, you want to get more fluid with Emmet, fine. I don't mind. You can build it all from hand. So I'm going to slack that out too. So you have the code, if you want to use it. It's up to you. Okay. Julio did it too. I'll show this. Julio is where? I don't know anybody's name. Julio. All right. I know you just sent it to me, so I'll show that when we're doing this. So I'm going to give you, let's say, I'm going to give you 20 minutes. Time, not Time Magazine, Timer. 20 minutes to try to do it. And implement the other things too. I want you to like import a font, set a font. Try to do other stuff. I'm going to try to build on things. And those are bonuses. You want to do it, do it. I'm really curious just about doing the nav. I really don't care if you do like the 4th of Google fonts. To make the design of the nav that way, that's the most important thing. Okay? Once again, port the Google fonts, assign the fonts. Use what you learned. You're going to need all of this for your project. So, right, Heather? Yes. Heather backs me on that. I'm just going to quickly grab a cup of coffee and I will be right back. Heather's running a show. Your show. Your part. I added a thumbs up to the Slack channel. When you just can get the structure down, you know, forget about the fonts and all that, click on the thumbs up. I just want to see, that's the key thing to this. The other stuff is also just kind of, doing the fonts would be great. It's just extra time. Yep. So, yeah, it's that. Structure. You see right now. You didn't see it. These are all the instructions. That's what you're going to see. Yeah. Thank you. Click on the thumbs up because you got the at least the position in place. You're doing, oh yes, you try to do a cheat line height. So line height is going to be on the parent of the actual thing. So try getting line height on the navigation. And then I don't know what the size is, so we just give it a move it. It's kind of moving. Something happened. Move down and did it move back up? There you go. Yeah, you just have to play with it. Usually, what I do is set the height of the navigation. Set the height to be the same value as the height of the parent, and then it puts it right there. So that means you have to use the display inline block on the LIs because the LIs are acting like block level. You create block level elements that sit next to each other. You turn those block level elements and change their display properties to be inline block. So target these. So you got class categories, but you need to target the LIs themselves. So it's categories, and after categories, we space them. And do LI. And now inside of the rule, you display inline block. Okay. Inline blocks. Yes, those inline blocks. You know, give them now the background color. Okay. So what you need to do is this. I'm going to show you because I think a few people are stuck on it.
Same.
Yeah. So what I see is a few people getting stuck on one specific thing, right? Is this. So I have this same thing, which maybe some of you already have, right? I'm going to go to my CSS and I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I want to target those LIs. So I'm going to say, I'm going to use a really long way like nav, ul, li. I'm going to create a rule. And how did I get, where did I get rid of it? How did I get these things to sit next to each other? Right? Same thing that I did there. I'm going to go here. I'm going to target the LIs, and I'm going to give them a display of inline block, and now they sit next to each other. Okay? It might also be easy at this point in time to like take the nav and the HTML, instead of adding your code there, maybe you add it right under the image so it makes it easier to do it. Let me just say. So where I would do it the next time. I'm going to revamp this thing to put your HTML here so you have the two to compare. So at least now you have them in the row. Okay? You have to create distance between them. I got to give the nav a background color, right? So I gave just the nav a background of, was it pink? Was that pink? Boom. But still, it needs some work, right? I helped you out with two things right here. You get it looking like that, and you kind of figure out the rest. Mm-hmm. Sure. No, I mean, you can do it. What happens when you end it? So what could you do? Could you change the property? So maybe change the anchor. So try doing it with the anchor. There you go.
So do I
You know, I mean, try deleting it. If you delete it, it's going to make them sit the same way. You need to do it for both. This is kind of a like, in order to achieve your design that you're looking for, to do the whole hover, you have to do it on both of those elements. Otherwise, visually, it looks the way you want it to look like, but the behavior isn't acting the way you want it to behave. All right, so I got 6 clicks on just getting the horizontal working, right? Be able to get the rest of it, awesome. Sure. Yep. Sweet. Okay. I see the word in there? No, I took it out. Okay. So what I see is so this is the size of it, right? Because the pink is now that large. Can you comment that out? I just want to see that. Just do something really. Oh, so what happens is it's one of those instances where adding a border on something pushes something away. So where do you have the border? And so for some reason, adding the border here contains the padding inside the element and gives it something to push it against. It's pushing up now through the element. And then this is just padding around the nav, right? Is that just padding around the nav? Yeah. Around the ankle, yeah. But there's also padding around here too, is there? Do you have anything around the nav itself? No, you don't. I'm just curious where that pattern's coming from. Right. Can you go to Dev Tools and just take a look and see? Inspect it. You get out a responsive one. Put that little section up right there. Click on the first button. Or click on it again because it was already out. And so click on that. And it's your nav. So here's your nav. Looks like your whole nav is just that big. I don't know where the extra space is coming from. There you go. What's that? UL. Your UL has margin top and margin bottom.
Wow, okay, so that's okay.
Yeah, so that's why. I think that's it. Remember how yesterday, without something to push up against, it created some white space?
Yeah, it shows it right here.
That's it. See? All developer tools. It's the magic of developer tools. You see it. Can't hide from you in developer tools.
How do you get to go from the bottom to the top?
Oh, I just copied and pasted. I just went here and cut out this from the bottom and put it just below the image tag. This is just an image. So I just took the text and I put it right there. I'm going to go over the solution in just a minute anyway. We got like 44 seconds, so. If someone did get the solution, just shoot me the solution. I can build it out, obviously. I like to show solutions to things. And even if you didn't get everything, that's fine too. Okay. I'm going to just cut this, put it up here. That be the timer. All right, let me do this. Let me just show. This is, all right, Emma's solution. I got two solutions, Maria's solutions and Emma's solution. I'll show Maria's earlier, I'll show Emma's. So this is it, right? Looks about it, right? I mean, we can create more distance here, but the effect is there. Like you could play around with the spaces and things. If you had to meet the specs for something, then you'd have to meet this. But they would tell you, we need this much padding and this much margin. And so let me just take a look. So the elements were the elements. There are a lot, okay. I'm going to go to the CSS just so that we can take a look at the section where you would have added some CSS, which is right here, right? So the nav, obviously background color pink, font family quicksand because you imported the font here, okay? This is key. If you're going to import the font into CSS, you have to do it as the first line, otherwise it won't work, okay? It'll trip you up, all right? So we got the fonts. I'm here. Font size 15 pixels, right? Just trying to match it. Looks good, right? This looks like the weight's a little greater, but no biggie. Then the nav, UL. List style type, none. If we get rid of this, nothing happens. Okay. We should have seen maybe the little dots, but didn't happen. Padding is 10 pixels. I just want to see some things change. There we go. Padding 10 pixels. So we put it, the padding is around the UL, right? Okay. Let's go to the LIs. And this is really where we were looking to make some changes, right? Now, the only change I would make here right now, just in the layout of the CSS, is I would move the LI above those because that's the kind of structure, right? I have nav, UL, have LIs, and these things would be the next thing that I would be touching in that core nested structure. So we turned on display inline block here. If I remove it, they sit like that. And sometimes that's what you want for your nav. You want them to sit like that, right? If I was to take a look at the food sense site, they have their nav like that. Sometimes that's what you want. You want their nav. But look what happens when they do this. When this thing gets responsive, look where the nav goes. It goes up towards the top, which means if we went from display in block to going to a design like that, that must mean they've changed the property to do that. And I'm going to assume, just, assumptions here. Oh, it moved it. Yeah, I'll worry about that later. Let's go back to that later. Just want to finish this thing. So I'm going to go back here. We'll undo this. And everything looks good. You go to the nav. You just did text decoration none, which would remove the underline. Right? We don't want the underline. You want the font to be white. Otherwise, the font is blue for anchors. Right? If I try to add white, if I took the white from here and I put it up towards the top, do you think it would work? If I added it here, would it work? No. Okay, what happened to the rest of the text? Like everything else went white because I have other LIs on the page, right? So to target an anchor tag to change its color, you have to target the anchor tag to change its color. You can't just target some carte blanche, everything be white now. That doesn't work. So this is a very specific thing. Letter spacing 2 pixels because you wanted to space it out, right? If we did like 5 pixels, just to show you cool effects, you could do 5 pixels, makes it look nice, right? Just showing you, introduce a few little things. And then padding 20 pixels, put the space around it, right? So if I do that, we see the padding and we do that. So what I want to do is just investigate and take a look. Now, is that what you expected to happen, though? Did you expect the padding to bleed out? Just ask. No, right?
I was just working fast. So.
Okay. So in the end, when you use developer tools to kind of validate, visually it looks exactly kind of like what you were aiming for. But if I'm adding padding on something and the padding is kind of pushing past, then my next question is like, why did I add that much padding if it's not doing the thing that I want it to do, right? Because it's pushing way past the thing. So in that instance, maybe we give some sort of height to the LI, right? Maybe if we gave the height, you gave this 20 pixels padding. So if I remove 20 pixels padding here, just going to copy it, remove it there. And actually, no, we'd want this padding here. We want that. How could I do what you want, give this padding? How could I force these elements to stay within their bounds? What do you think we could do? Yep. Could add a border, right? So that's one way to do it. Let's just take a look. If I did border, 1 pixel, solid. All right, well, let's say did it. Nope, bled right past it. So the border isn't doing it on there. Maybe the border on the LI, I don't know, I'm just trying to figure things out. Nope, still didn't do it there, right? You see the LI, and you know this anchor tag is bleeding out. What's the other property we're focusing in on right now? You could assign height. There's another thing that we can do. See this display inline block? Anchor tags are what? What type of display property are anchor tags? Inline. So what if I went here and I'm just like, boom, right? These things can be used interchangeably at any point in time. I can take an element and make it act like another element at any point in time. And when I said inline block is kind of the best of both worlds, I just fixed the problem, right? I fixed it by just setting this. Now, if I go to developer tools, right, and we take a look at it, you'll see now maybe I don't need the padding around the UL, because look, the UL has margin top and bottom. It's got some padding. Maybe I don't need any padding around the UL. Awesome. And perhaps I don't need margin am I flipping out here? Yeah, right, margin 0. Not always easy being up here. Margin 0. I got rid of the margin also. Okay? If I didn't need the margin, remember, like, margins to push away, this is one single element that has a child element, so I would use padding there if I wanted to create distance. I wouldn't use margin here if I wanted distance between the parent and its child. I would use padding in that instance. That's where I would use it. Okay? I wouldn't use margin. And if we didn't set them on, let me just see if I got rid of the margin. Look what the margin does. Look what happened. Can anyone tell me what's going on here? This happened the other day. I'm going to get rid of the margin on the UL and tell me visually what happens. Right? Why is my nav moving? Yeah, the margin is bleeding out, right? It's pushing up about outside of it. And that would mean either I put a border around it to lock in that margin so it has something to push up against, or instead of using margin, I use padding, because padding's internal, right? Because that's what's happening. If I go here, look at the margin, it's bleeding right outside of this thing, and I don't want that. I don't want this thing. I don't want a child element creating the distance between the two elements. I want the parent element to control space. If I want the parent element to be a distance from this, I set margin on the parent element, not a child element to push outside. That's not a good design choice. So I just go here, get rid of that, and then we have a solid something to work with, right? Cool. Awesome. And then once again, if you had time, you could have gone here, highlighted one. If you wanted to highlight the Contact Us button and make it stand out like the GA side, how would you do that? What would you do here? Oh, you were trying to target it, right? Trying to target the span, so you had it as a span, right? So if I went here to the span, you're like, you gave it a different font family. I can see that it has a different font family. Is it quicksandiosis? Okay. And maybe we could just do background, I don't know, light blue. Let's see. Oh, well, that wouldn't do it, right? That's not the look that we're going for. So we'd have to do, instead of a span, instead of you using a span here to target it, what if we did this? What if I got rid of the span? Because obviously the span isn't working as we want. What if I targeted this thing with a class is equal to contact? Or better yet, like active, to say that anything that's active will always be bolded, right? So if I targeted a class of active, I just go down here, instead of saying span, dot active, and then you have it, right? Once again, using classes, you could have used an ID to do this also, but the reason why I'm using active is because as I click on the navs, when we get to JavaScript, I'm going to click on this nav, I'm going to remove active from all other elements and then assign active to this element. And you usually don't do that with IDs. It's not an ID thing to remove an ID and assign an ID. Like an ID that's assigned is always on that element. It's like a perpetual thing. Classes are meant to be like, assign it, remove it, give it to this thing, give it to that thing. You want it to be blue, I can make 1,000 things blue. Okay? Awesome. So let's take a 5-minute break, come back, we'll jump into semantic elements. Okay? Yay. Done with that. Will you lock up there? Raise it.
Yeah, and also need it to like straight.
All right. So what you did was you assigned pink to the. It looks like you assigned it to maybe the developer tools. Oh, command option J. Push the developer tools. If I go here, what it looks like you did is you assigned pink to the LIs, and instead pink should be assigned to the nav. So here you want to create a rule to target the nav. And here we want to do background. There you go. Household. And then you just remove pink from the individual elements. You remove that.
Oh, okay. So I was making it like for the individual LIs, and that was making it.
Exactly. And so, you know, there's that space between there now. And I wouldn't do, let me just see what you did for the anchors.
Yeah.
You did the LIs in line block, right? So the elements are
I think I did just inline.
Oh, that's
And
right.
then and importance also. So why is that?
Well, inline block gives them height, width, and marginal amount.
Okay.
Inline does not. Inline does not have, you cannot set a height and width on an element with inline, or can you give it a margin top and bottom.
Oh.
So inline block has the best,
So
best
it's
of kind of both.
Okay. So simple, so it's more similar to block.
Yes,
Oh.
except the elements sit next to each other. So they're block level elements that sit next to each other.
Oh, so only within line block can you make it?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, you can with inline, but you can't give those elements
Margin.
margins top and bottom, width and height.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
All right. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, put it right here.
Well, just not the right one, right? So it's supposed to be.
Oh, so you did. The net, this looks good for the net.
Okay.
Just for right now, that's an average. What I would do now, the LI. Now, for some reason, the LIs aren't acting the way we want to sit next to each other. So something to me is not right here. I'm just going to analyze and see if there's any errors. There's some error. Unexpected unknown font declaration. Saying it doesn't know. So I'm just going to get rid of this. I don't know if that's causing it. So let's just. I don't know. I'm just looking to like rule out any possible errors, unexpected duplicate selector. So you have this defined twice. Right. So we don't want to do that. So I'm going to go find out where you have it. You have it here in line block. You have it here in line block. So I'm going to move this one. So let's just analyze and see. New errors. So you're good. So now I'm going to try to understand why this display inline block is not moving these things in inline block. So I'm going to go take a look at your. I'm going to tidy this up so it tabs everything. So you don't have an app.
Yes. Here's where I'm supposed to.
Yeah, that's the app.
Here.
Yeah. You need a nav. I need to take the closing nav. Take the closing nav, like put it right. And now your stuff sits the way it is. I'm just going to once again tidy it up so that it tabs everything over, makes everything nice. Now everything sits. The order that I gave you, like, yeah. Yeah. What I would suggest is though, like when something like that happens and things aren't working, like compare it to the little image snippet that I gave. Hit it and see it, like, right, that's the structure. I'm really like, oh, I don't have the nav. You know what I'm saying? Because now you're just trying to troubleshoot CSS. You're targeting the wrong thing. You could have done it if you didn't have nav. You could have just targeted the LIs. I could have just done this, and that would have worked. But this is going to tag every LI on my page, and that's not what I want. Yeah, control Z here. That's cool. Oh no. Forgot the timer. Right. I think we got most people anyway, so I'm going to set it to the minute. Okay. I just want to show you the food sense site and their nav. Okay. So when we get to responsive in developer tools, there's a responsive little button right here next to select the element. And when I go to responsive, I have these kind of breakpoints up here that I can move my site around and expand and change what it would look like at those widths and heights. Right. We'll spend more time doing that. I just wanted to show you that. So here, if I highlight the anchor tag, it's a display of what? Block, right? Now, if this thing is naturally a display of block, why are they going out of their way to say display block? And I kind of mentioned it earlier. Why would I say be this thing when you already are this thing? Exactly. Or you change it in another place too. We can use media queries when we do responsive. Media queries listen to the width and height of something, and you can trigger properties to change, right? So it's set there because when I go to this size, they move up. Now, what is their display property? Inline block. You know what I'm saying? So you can always go to all these sites and investigate and see how they do it. Sometimes you're going to go to sites that are going to be flexbox, and they'll say flexbox. It won't be this. But this is a standard thing. This is a standard way to go. I mean, if I went to the General Assembly site, right, and I was like, all right, let me take a look. They're doing it here as a nav, right? So I have to click on that. And let me just see how these things are composed. These are LIs. These LIs, I'm not sure. Right? Doesn't look like. So it must be on the parent. And does the parent have anything? I gotta be honest. Oh, they just have display block. So because these LIs are block level elements, so they take up the full width. So I don't really have to go out of my way to do anything. But I do have to go out of my way to do it when they are at the full width. So I'm gonna go, let me pull it out, right? Now if I do the LIs, how did they get them to act? Look, display inline block. If I get rid of it, they sit all the way to the right, okay? It's a standard thing to do. Can't emphasize that enough. You're gonna see it all over the place. That's why we spent more time on this with the anchor tags than the other one, because the nav Anchor isn't used as often as a ULLI anchor. Okay? Let me just get rid of this. Sweet. So, semantic elements. All right. Now, I assigned a, let me see, was it the reading here? Is there a homework reading here? Semantic elements, how to use semantic elements, right? I don't know if it was really, I have to change it because it's not a 24-minute read. Maybe people looked at it, 24 minutes. I don't have 24 minutes. I'm not going to read it. It's a 6-minute read. So I'm actually going to go back in here and be like 6 minutes. So no one's like, you got 6 minutes. Trust me, 6 minutes of your time. So semantic elements, and what are they, right? Semantic elements are going to be used to define some content on the page. Just like an H1 defines a header, paragraph is paragraph text, and anchor is like, I'm going to click on this thing at some point in time. Spans are so that things sit next to each other, and maybe I want to target the spans. You know what? I'm just going to go to this article here. Slides aren't all that great. HTML5 came out with semantic elements. I'm actually going to do this. Semantic elements, and I'm going to go to W3 schools. Okay, just because they have a much more concise versus reading the whole article thing. These are some of the new elements that came out with HTML5. Okay, and they're meant to define that specific content, just like an H1 is, just like a paragraph, just like an LI. These things are meant to kind of define specific types of content. Okay, the things we're going to be working with are things like the header, which we worked with, footer we saw the other day, right? We saw it as part of the ours. All right, now you've been working with, so you've been working with semantic elements. We also have things like section, aside and articles, right? Here, there's also a mean one as well. Summary, time, these things I don't ever work with. Big caption, I don't really work with. Details, I'd have to even take a look. Like, I don't work with these things, so I don't really know what they do. I have to go take a look and see. Here it'll tell you what they do. So what is a section? Defines a section in a document. Like, that is so ambiguous. Well, what is a section? I don't know, a bunch of stuff. Well, how much stuff defines a section, right? So the ambiguity here is just they gave it these elements so that you, wonderful developers, could make the decision on how you use it. Like, I can't tell you that that's not a section, that's an article, that's an aside. You can use the debate here. Maybe if you do article, all right, so section is like, defines the section in a document. Okay. Well, what's an article? An article specifies independent, self-contained content. Independent here means that an article should make sense on its own. It should be possible to read it independently of the rest of the website. So an article could be something that I could see on another page in the website. Like, if the content that I'm looking for makes complete sense or needs to be on this page, then that would be a section because it's related to the page. But if there's content there that I could take and put on another page and it makes sense, that's an article, right? That's what that means to me. It can be seen independently of that page on any page, right? And then it's like, hey, nesting. Well, an article element specifies independent. A section defines section in a document. Can we use the definitions to decide how to nest the elements? No, we cannot. In my mind, it's still like, I'm confused. I don't know, right? So the internet, you'll find HTML pages with section elements containing articles, articles containing sections. Once again, section is generic enough to say that it contains content on a page, right? That's just, all right. And an article is self-contained stuff, so an article can contain this, that, contain that. I don't know. I get confused with it. It is confusing, right? It's a hard thing to like tell you what the answer is because there is no answer. I can only tell you that reading an article like this provides a much better context to it, right? So they start out with probably the most important thing, the main element. Should contain the main content of your web page, right? When you land on the page, there's always a main section on the page, right? I hit the page. This is really what they want to tell me about the page. And all my content, that is The main purpose of my site should be in the main section. That just makes sense, right? And in here they show you an example. Like I go to the site, here is main. Everything on my site is inside of main because that is the biggest bulk of content, right? That's easy enough, right? You should only use one main element on a page, and it should not be placed within an article, right? It is the main content, and it should contain everything, right? That's what they're trying to tell. That's pretty easy to kind of wrap our head around. Then we start hitting these articles, like an article element should contain only a piece of self-contained content. We know that we can distribute, and so, oh my God, we have a header inside of an article. Like, that's not what we've been doing. Like, I created a header inside of a container, right? So here they're like, here's the header and here's the article. Once again, I can't justify anything. I can just say that this is their interpretation of it, right? Now this article contains a header and it contains a section. I'm speechless. I don't really know what to say. So what I'm trying to convey here is that these things can be used interchangeably, and it's very ambiguous. And as you develop your site, you have to make decisions on how to incorporate these and use these, and just read a few articles on it to get a better understanding. And that's why I gave the article so you can read it. Things like navs make sense. There's a few of them that really make sense, right? Like a header kind of makes sense, a footer makes sense, main makes sense on where to use it. And a nav can be used anywhere where there's a nav. And sometimes the footer has navigation, right? Has a bunch of links. That's a perfect place for a nav. Navs don't always have to be at the top. They can be at the bottom. They can be on the side. They can be anywhere where you want to drive the user to go to different portions of your site. That's a navigation. Anything that leads the user from one section of your page to another, and it's an aggregation of those links, validates being a nav, okay? Well, what's an aside? Because these are the elements we're going to be using, just a handful of them. A side element is used to represent content that is tangibly related to the content surrounding it, but could be considered separate. I almost feel like that's what an article was. Was that not? All right? Things like sidebars. So think like an advertisement, right, on a website. Even if I went to like W3 schools, they always have advertisements. Like this thing over here, that's an aside. Clearly, that thing could be anywhere. It has no relevance to any page that I go to. It's not really related to my site. Maybe like an aside should be. It's pertinent to my site. This is just an advertisement. And this advertisement will change depending on who paid me the most money to put it up there, right? So that to me is an aside, okay? And I think they give you here like Google has found it, just something here. But it's still kind of tied into the site here. And then the header element we kind of know. Footer we know. I'm not going to go into these things because I don't use addresses, and they just pretty much stop there. There's a ton of other things that, did you have a question?
Like the side navigation,
No, I would put that as a nav because the aside is something that is more to me like not super relevant to my site. So I would put it as a navigation there. That's probably how I would do it. I'd have to take a look though. Once again, I don't know. I would just put a nav there and maybe put it as an article or something like that.
Like the social links.
Yeah, so what we could do is here, just take a look. I don't know how they design it. Yeah, I would assume maybe somebody here is like, I'm going to write an article on it. Let's see how they were doing it. Here is the thing. What is it? It's a class of post content, shared post content, yada, yada. Doesn't make any sense. There's no semantic here. There's no nothing that makes any sense, right? There's just a bunch of classes. The group of people that designed this decided these classes mean things throughout the site. It's their way of giving giving elements semantic context through classes, which was what people were doing before these elements came out. I created a div that had a class of main. I created a div that had a class of section. And because people were using this context throughout the years, somebody was like, why don't we just create those elements, right? So I'd have to find an example where they have that defined as that. Once again, it's so willy-nilly, I can't really tell you like what's going to be what. If it's a nav, I would put it in a nav. But maybe when they designed this page, HTML5 just came out, I don't know. And they were like, this is our site. I'm not going to go out of my way to like start changing things. That's developer time and money. Yeah. CSS. What we're talking about is structuring content. So I want to just look at my content and be like, this is this thing, this is this thing. I'm not worried about where it's positioned right now. I'm just saying, like, I'm going to wrap it in here. So when I look at it in HTML, I'm like, it makes sense just looking at it as a file, right? Yeah, HTML is your content and your structure, and CSS allows you to do anything that you want and put any elements anywhere that you want, okay? They're not subject. CSS just breaks the bounds and, like, whatever you want to do. You want this element from over here, you want to move it over there. Guess what? Here's a CSS thing that I'll take it from there and put it over there. And you're like, well, that's kind of crazy. When would I use that? All the time, you know? So using these elements, we want to apply those elements, right? So let's do this. Semantic elements. All right. We're going to be working with these layouts this week and next week. This week we're doing it to grid, to flexbox. Next week we apply them to grid. And you're going to see there is a difference between the structure of the elements between using flexbox and using grid. Okay? Grid is a new way of layout. And it's a way that's really taking off. A lot of people are really embracing grid. But flexbox, you need flexbox. Okay? And I only emphasize that because as part of the homework, I have an article on grid versus flexbox. And you will see that the article is going to state that you should use both in a design, but sometimes flexbox is pertinent to this content and grid is pertinent to that. But they both are like the best of buddies and you using them to do that. And so we steer away from doing a lot of this now and doing these other new tools. That's why I don't emphasize that a whole lot. You have to know it, but I don't emphasize it. So let us go to semantic elements right here, right? So we're going to be doing these layouts. Let me, oh, before we do that, we have to, oh no, let's go, let me slack this up. Shoot. All right, there you go. There's the code pen. Our ultimate goal is to create several layouts, okay? I'm gonna walk you through just kind of applying semantic elements to it. And so if we take a look at this first box here, right? Get some colors here. And we see this design, right? If I see this design here, right? What could we say about this design? Here we go, right? That's our layout. So what would green be? This looks like the header, right? I would consider that the header, right? And inside of the header, we don't see it. There's no internal content here, but we probably know that inside the header, there's going to be what? A navigation, right? So probably nav is up there, right? What's this brown area over here? Well, the whole thing is the body. Yeah, this whole thing is the body. Okay, so that could be name, or it could be a section, right? Now, what we don't see here is that there could be elements around these things. We just don't see them, right? This is layout of content, but in order to like structure even this content, I may need something around this. I would probably say that that is a section. That's just kind of where I would go. I would say that's a section. Now, what's this thing over here? All right, it kind of looks like an aside, right? So I would say, hey, that's an aside. All right, and the bottom, there's a foot, right? Pretty much, and there could be a nav in there. All right. Pretty easy enough, right? Now, I would extend this design. Mark it in my pocket. I would extend it to something that we don't see. That's the stuff that you see, but I would extend it and probably say, like, this would be what? Mean, right? So I would say something like main, right? And main would take these two, or just that section, right? I'm just saying like that's the main section. That's how I would design it. Even though you don't see a main box, I probably would add a box there, right? I would put things inside of other things. So as you're designing things, you have to take this into consideration, right? That's the layout that we're shooting for, right? Let's go to our thing and like apply that layout. So what you're gonna see is I've divided the HTML into the different sections, right? So the 2-column layout is this. This is what we're shooting for, 2-column layout. 1 column, 2 column. This is a 3-column layout, right? Here's 3-column layout, and then we have simple marketing website where if I went to simple marketing, it's kind of a 2-column here, but 3-column there. Things get more advanced in the layout. If you go even further to marketing with nav, and then you go magazine, like you used to have to start making some serious decisions on what boxes are around the things that you don't see. Like I see all of this, but how do I structure this? Is this going to be something? Do I feel like start asking a lot of questions? And what you'll start to see is when you turn on flexbox, flexbox is going to control the way these things behave. It's going to blow your mind. I'm going to do flexbox, and you're going to be like, what the hell just happened? They just acted like inline elements, but they have this other property. So we're going to go back here, and we're going to structure this thing out. Okay? So in our HTML, I want that design. So I'm going to do that design, right? Header, boom. Header's all by itself. We're not putting content. This is layout. You're not going to see any text inside of anything, just content. There's my header. Awesome. And what do we say? Main? So I'm going to use, once again, I'm going to use Emmet now. I'll just zoom in. So you can see here I do main, greater than sign, section, plus aside. Once again, it could have been an article too. Now remember, the greater than sign says it's going to be a child element, and the plus sign says what? It's a sibling, so they're next to each other, right? Okay, so I'm going to tab that, and I have that, right? Cool. And I just need the last thing, which is the footer. And now I have the footer, right? Once again, with Emmet, I could have built the whole structure like this. Header, main, section, article. I go up 1 level, and I say footer. I go up 2 levels. I'm just showing you. Don't flip out. And I have the same thing, just using Emmet. So I'm going to go back, comment this out. You don't have to memorize it. I'm just kind of showing you. If you really want to write HTML quicker, faster, because you're tired of writing it by hand and like fat fingering things, and you just want to get to the styling and things, Emmet's just a really cool way of doing it. We just use it a little bit here, right? So now we have it. Nothing really is here though, right? I don't really see anything. Why don't we see anything? Yeah, we don't have anything, right? I've given colors to things. Ultimately, what we're going to want to see is something like this. One second, I'm going to show you what we're ultimately going to be seeing is this. Okay, that's ultimately what we want. We want this design. I added the colors so that once they have a height and a width, we don't need the text in there. I just kind of added the text just to be like, here's the header, here's the main. If we want, we could add that. That's not really needed, but I added it so that it could give context to what we're seeing. So here, I think in the last class, we decided that was an article. Now, compare this to this, and do you think this should still be an aside, or should that be an article? Or was I wrong with this design? Should these be 2 articles? I don't really know. I'm going to be honest, right? I'm just saying, it's all semantic. I can't really tell you. I like this design. I'm going to change them to be articles because that's the solution that I have, and I want to kind of stick with what I got. So I'm just going to go back here, and in the HTML, I'm not going to set it to be an aside. I'm going to be an article, okay? I'm going to save it. That's all I did. Change it from one to the other. Okay? Now, the things don't have any heights or widths. So in here, we're going to give them some dimensions. Okay, because I want to see the things on the page, and I'm not seeing anything right now. So the first thing that I want to see is I want to see, so we got bodyline, text align, body. All right. We need to give things heights and widths so I can start seeing these dimensions of things, right? So let's do this. I'm trying to see where my height and widths are defined. And then we'll assign it. Come on. I assign that. Container has a height. Okay. My container has a height. So I think we did this as in the layout itself. So I'm going to go to the layouts, right? So I'm saying the layouts have a height of 500 pixels, which they do, right? If I go do this, they seem like they have a height, right? Seem like there's a lot of distance between the things. So it looks like the layouts themselves have this height. So what if I did a border, 1 pixel solid around the layouts, boom. You see the layouts now have a height and width? So all I did was go to line 30, 31, and then hit enter, and I just added a border around. Now you can see that they have a height and width, right? Okay. What else are we doing this? Okay. So now we need to give these other things some dimensions, right? Because otherwise we're not going to see anything, correct? So for now, let's just give them some dimensions here for the layouts, and they're going to have, let me just take a quick look here. So we'd have to add them to sections. All right. Here. We have everything here. So what if I said the header, we give it a height of, is this the height? Oh, I don't want to do it here because that's layout 1. I want to give some standard dimensions here. So on line 7, that's how we have background. I'm going to do this. Height, I don't know, say 50 pixels. There we go. I have a height of 50 pixels. Cool. So that means if I add a height of 50 pixels to my header, I could probably add a height of 50 pixels to the footer. Okay. And then the main section, I would go to the section itself right here and maybe do this as a height of, I don't know, 200 pixels, let's say. Okay, cool. And then the article might have a height of 200 pixels. All right. Once again, this is not the layout that we're looking at, right? This is not what we want. We have to have things sit next to each other, right? And that's going to involve, if I did this last year, I would have spent a lot of time doing this. I think when I taught this 2 years ago, this thing was a float example, and we were floating stuff, and then we used inline, and we didn't even touch flexbox or grid. This year, it's about flexbox and grid. What I want you to do is just this. This isn't about moving things around just yet. That's not what I want you to do. What I want you to do is go through this next design. I want you to implement the next design. Create those elements as they're here. create them in the HTML. I'm not going to do it for you. So I'm going to go here. In the HTML, there is a section called 3-column layout. And in there, I would like you to create that structure. Okay? This exercise really won't take that long, and then we'll jump into flexbox. Create that structure. And instead of doing main here, change main to section. Don't use main there. I'm going to change this design ultimately to be this. So instead of main, this is going to be a section, and then wrap the main stuff, the asides, in a main container. So what I'm going to do right now is to make those changes so that this thing I think I updated it. Yeah, so I changed them to be sections. Okay. Remember, it's not going to look like that, right? I'm going to move this over to the left side of the screen. I'm going to move this to the right side so that you can see it's not going to look like this. Isn't about making it look like this yet. It's about you structuring your content. The client has told you the content that you want, and you're just kind of putting the content in the boxes. Once your client's like, yes, that's the content, then you can start doing the layout right afterwards. This is you structuring it and then making the decision later to whether I'm going to use display inline, whether I'm going to use flexbox, whether I'm going to use grid. But this is how your page is going to look originally until you make any edits. And that's all I want you to do is focus on content, structure. Then we will look at design. Okay? Is everyone good with the 3-column? Okay. Here's the 3-column. So I really want to just kind of get in the flexbox. So this is the 3-column. I'll slack it out so you. One thing I could save this, and since you have the code pen, just open it up and you'll see it. But I will put the structure in Slack so you see it. Okay. Now we don't see the asides, and why don't we see the asides? Yeah, I didn't give them any height at all. I mean, these things have heights, but they don't have width. So, you know, in the end, we have to go into CSS to target the asides and be like, oh, here's the asides. And maybe we'll give the asides a height of, I don't know, we gave those things 200 pixels. I'm just going to give them 100 pixels because I don't want them to like blow up outside. So once again, we're going to structure this differently, but that's what it'll look like, right? It's not as dark yellow as that, but that's fine. And then the last layout is this. Okay? Can you create this layout here? And what do you think would happen? Like this is main, right? Maybe that's main here, you know? Maybe even these things are a section opposite them, right? How am I going to get these to sit next to each other? Like, there's some other structural designs here, but write what you think would define it. Right, whatever you think needs to do this based on what we just did here in the previous one. It's about you just test it. I can't tell you what's right, but we're going to do the design that I ultimately decide on, but I want this to be some freedom for you to like think. Okay. So I'll slack out what I came up with this design too. You can compare it to what you have. Okay. I just slacked it out. This is just what I think it would be. Main section with that main stuff. I put this stuff inside of a section, but maybe that should be inside main. Maybe we'll make that decision. I'm just kind of changing it up a little bit from my previous design. Do you see any? Oh, because that's a child. Yeah.
I think your header is corrected.
See, this is the original one that I did. And these two carrots are things that take you up one level each carrot together. Yeah. What's that?
Your header's wrapping made in every.
Oh, and the last one? Okay. The two column there, right? Main. Oh, the two column there. Okay. You got header, footer, you got main, you got side, section, and side. So did you go to developer tools? Go to developer tools and take a look at some side. I don't think you have, maybe you didn't add the height and width to the side. Yeah. So no, if you don't see it, you go to developer tools, but you see it there, and it says it doesn't have a width or a height, and it doesn't have a width or a height. Okay. And the header and the last one had the header, yep. So you're right, let me take that out. Do that, okay. And we also see that it kind of bleeds out too. There's so much content in this last one that those widths and heights, the heights that we set aren't good for this design. But once again, it's about structure. I just want you to have structure. Save it. If you do have any questions, if yours isn't working, copy and paste mine, have it. It's just about kind of getting us to this point, understanding the structure a little bit. This stuff is still so ambiguous. Once again, you can do whatever you want, but if we're all on the same page, then it's going to make it easy for us to implement the next phase of the wonderful world of flexbox, which is where we're headed. Okay? Cool. So I'm going to jump in. If you did get lost, Take mine and copy and paste it. That's all I'm going to say. Take it, copy, paste it, get it working.
Wait, the one that you slapped out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the header is off, so I have to adjust that. So let me just adjust the one that I sent out. The header was surrounding everything, so I'm just going to take that, put it back up here. All right, save changes. Cool. And you also have the live one too. Remember, I slacked this one out. Everyone has access to this, the changes that we're doing. Okay, that's just semantic. Once again, we can blow past that really quickly because it's so ambiguous. I don't really know. There's no like hard rules. We're just gonna and that is gonna change when we try to structure our content. So we're gonna get into. And that was really kind of quick and easy. Still, you're probably like, I don't understand it, and that's fine. Once we start applying flexbox, now this is where things get fun. Flexbox. Okay. This is the official kind of flexbox site and documentation. And we're going to kind of work through this. But what flexbox does is some crazy stuff, and it's really amazing. And it's almost the kind of thing I just have to show you flexbox. Okay? You just have to believe me. And so we're going to do flexbox. We got our little code along. Another little code along. Once again, you can watch, you can code. This stuff is always saved. If I edit it, you'll have access to it at any point in time, right? It's not a big deal. So now I have it. This looks similar to what we did earlier. I have a couple of boxes. That's really it. I have some boxes, a container with 3 divs, classes. Maybe I should have used semantic elements here, right? I feel bad I didn't use semantic. I don't feel bad. So I'm going to go to the boxes, and maybe let's give the boxes, let's give the container a height of, say, I don't know, I'm going to say 200 pixels. Actually, you know what? 100 pixels. Maybe 100 pixels. All right. That's better. We can make it big. All right. Awesome. Now, let's turn on Flexbox. But before we turn on Flexbox, I want to give the boxes some colors. Okay? I want to give the boxes different colors. So this is a generic one for all the boxes. I did mention earlier that we would discuss something called pseudo classes. Okay? And the pseudo class that I introduced earlier was what? Hover is a pseudo class, right? So this thing called pseudo classes, right? And the pseudo class is just something, it's a property of an element. It's position, hover in action, right? So the one pseudo class that you saw was hover, right? And that 2 colons distinguish something as being a pseudo class, okay? A dot represents a class, a colon represents a pseudo class, okay? If I want to target these elements, I want to target box 1 and I want to give it a color. How do I do that based on what you already know? Give it a class, or I could do what? Give it an ID. 2 ways to do it, right? I don't want to do it that way because you already know how to do that, right? I mean, once again, this already has a class of box. So in essence, I could say here, I could be like, I don't know, background, light blue, and they're all light blue. So it worked. And if I want to target each one, I could go here and say box 1 and box 2. I could do that. But what if I told you you couldn't edit the HTML? You could only do it via CSS. Here's a pseudo class for us to do that. So once again, I'm going to use this long way. Box, container, space div, dot. Oh, here, dot container. And we're going to target just this first box here. And I am going to do, I'm going to do div.box, and I'm going to do colon first of type. First of type is a pseudo class. Let me zoom in a little bit. It's not as clear back. All right. So let's do this. Now I'm going to do background and say maybe pink. Let's say Pink does it. Look, it's pink now. So, based on logic, right? First of type means, which one did I target? The first one, right? So I said, look for the div boxes, find the very first box, and target just that one. Which means if I have first of type, what else do you think I have? Last of type. Last of type, right? I mean, I'm just thinking opposites, right? First of type, last of type. Background, maybe a light green. I like the light shades. Oh, wow, snap. First of type, last of type. This is how you can target elements based on their position. There's something about that element that's unique. The uniqueness here is its position in the container or on the page, right? I mean, I'm targeting the container and I'm saying, look for boxes inside of you and target the first one. That's what I'm at. That's what I'm saying, right? So what if I wanted the middle container? Well, it's nth of type. There's no like second of type, third of type. It's nth of type, and I have to tell it which one I want, and I want the second one. And let's just try this. Background, light yellow maybe. Is light yellow even a color there? There we go. Okay. So nth of type is, it starts counting at 1. This is nth of type 1, 2, or 3. So if I wanted, I could do this as nth of type 1, nth of type 3. Considering nth of type 2 works, I could really use this elsewhere. Okay? I know it's kind of like, what? Just believe me that this is a way to target elements in CSS if you're not allowed to touch the HTML. Sometimes you don't want to just throw a bunch of stuff in here. Like, that's fine. If I can do this, if I can target elements successfully in CSS, why do I need to go to my HTML and start adding more stuff than it needs, right? If CSS allows me to do that. A site that, I'll be right with you, a site that really conveys this is something called, maybe Brian showed it, Zen Garden. All right, Zen Garden. All right, so this is really cool. This site challenges people to take this page. See this page, right? Pretty basic page. And you cannot touch the HTML, but you can touch the CSS only. And they've changed the designs completely solely through CSS. The structure of the HTML has not been edited. This is the same structure, and it says beauty of design, and there's some text here, right? If I go back, right, the beauty of CSS design. They're both the same content. Now I'm going to go to this one. What does this one look like? That's kind of cool too, right? All done through CSS. There's so much that you can do, and from this one site, you could learn to master CSS by looking at the designs and seeing how they moved something from here to there. How did they get these icons in here? Are those icons even on the page? No, those icons aren't even here, right? I don't see those icons. And yet, they put icons here, and I would just be like, developer tools, how did I do that? Oh, there's a pseudo element where they added something. There's so much that you can do. Like, there's times up here I'm like, I didn't teach you enough. And I can only teach you so much. We will get to what that thing is, but there's pseudo class, and then there's a pseudo element, and a pseudo element allows you to inject content onto the page. Okay, that's why I'm introducing this. I want to show you the power of just CSS alone, and you don't always need to like bog down the HTML with a class this, class that, when you can target it directly here. Cool? All right. Let's do this. Before I jump into Flexbox, why don't we just take another 5-minute break? It's been a while. I'm sure everybody wants it. Take the 5-minute break. I'm going to set the timer. This time it's going to run 5 minutes. I'm going to start back up. Just about to jump into Flexbox.
When you concepts that help us centering this, so it's in line with each other.
So you haven't written it.
Oh, yeah, it's just empty.
Oh, I got you. Oh, shoot me your pen. Do you mind if I pull it up? It'll just be easier if I look on the big screen. Shoot it to me, Allie. Shoot it to it.
There's too many out.
What?
Oh,
Oh no, I said shoot it to me, Allie.
okay.
This is yours. Did you save yours? Because I don't see the nav. I see this, but I don't see the icon.
I just saved it.
All right, so let me refresh. There you go. All right, cool. All right, so you want to center this thing right here, right? So I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna just take a look at everything. You got a nav. You got a UL. Oh, and that's part of your UL. He's doing it. So I'm gonna try doing. Did you try to do? How did you center these LIs?
Inline.
Okay.
Well, center it. When I added the color to the contrast,
Yep.
it moved them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's take a look. I want to see like this thing here doesn't take up the full height, right? I mean, that's fine. And this UL looks like it's the whole thing. You gave it no padding, no margin. I'm just trying to determine like where the height's coming
The
from.
last LI.
So you have, oh, yeah. So here we go. Oh, so the last LI, you gave it some height.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So you gave it display inline block. Right. Is that all the LIs? All the LIs have. All the LIs have that. Is it just this you gave? Where's the height? Like I'm just trying to see. I don't see height here assigned to the last LI. There's no height.
No, I have no height anywhere.
Yeah, you don't have any height anywhere. So what I'm trying to understand is like, here's your nav, and your nav is taking up the whole height. If a nav is taking up the whole height, but height has not been assigned to the nav, then that height is being generated by the content. Something inside of there is pushing this thing out to make it big.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, here's the UL. The UL doesn't have any height either. So I'm like, all right, must be coming from these things. Here's your LI. So it's positioning it up there and creating distance this way. So I'm thinking something else over here is pushing its way down to create that bottom distance. Let me just say. Yeah. The height of your nav is coming from this thing up here and from this element starting here and pushing down. That's how the height is being created, right? So if I wanted to center everything, right? I'm gonna give the nav a specific height, just so I can control something. So I'm gonna say for the nav, I'm gonna say height, I don't know, 100 pixels. Let's see where that. All right. So the nav has a height of 100 pixels, and I'm gonna give the nav a line height of 100 pixels, and that did not work. So I think there's some other stuff like this LI may have too much height or something, like this icon. Like here's the icon. I don't see why this thing is so high. Like, because nothing else has height. Here's the UL. This LI doesn't have a height, but yet it is high. That's pretty tall. So I wonder why they're having so much height. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna get rid of the padding to move it back. I'm just gonna start like trying to turn things off because I don't really know why things are doing what they're doing. There's some padding here. Did you have this as inline? I see you have this. Did you find this somewhere? Oh, differ. All right. I'm just going to give it a display of inline block. All right. I'm just trying to control it. I don't know why this thing is bleeding out.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give these elements have display of inline block. I'm going to get rid of this icon because I want to just see if I can control things without the icon.
Without the icon, I'm able to get it, but like with the icon, I can't get it.
Yeah. So I have here padding 0, but these LIs still bleed out. And I'm just trying to figure out why this LI would bleed out if it doesn't. Oh, because of the padding on these guys right here. Padding. All right. So now the LIs, maybe it's your font size. I don't know. Maybe font size. Yeah, I think the font size was pushing it out. I think the font size is pushing these things out. So I don't know why that was. I'm going to try adding the font size again, and it just makes it bigger. Oh, no, that was padding. I'm sorry. That was padding here? Get rid of padding. And maybe it's over here. Did I get rid of font size? Yeah. Here you have 25 pixels font size. And they are getting pushed out a little bit. Like this LI is bleeding outside. So if I actually gave the LIs a border, just so that I could see them, border 1 pixel solid, I'd see that they're outside of this thing. So now if I get rid of the height on the nav, now they work. Right, now I'm just letting the elements define it. If I can't figure out one thing, I'm just going to kind of play a game where, all right, well, if I remove the height, then I'm not forcing the nav to be a certain height. The elements themselves will define the height. So I kind of got that to work, right? I still need your icon here that I don't have. I'd have to refresh it to get that back. And then we're back to kind of square one, right?
Yeah.
So I'd have to start playing around with this again where I get rid of, I forgot what it was. I forgot what we did. I had given this a height, and that forced these. I had taken the padding away from these things, I think, like just to get rid of them. Is it this one too? Font size, text decoration color. Yeah, the LIs don't really have anything. Icon. I want to center this icon. I want to do. Well, I'm going to try this. I'm just going to try something. Regular line height 2, 3. Yeah. Only doesn't seem to work with any of them. Yeah, I have to take a look at them. Right?
No worries.
Yeah. Now you got me like curious. Oh, this thing didn't even go off. I didn't hear it. I would have jumped back in. All right. Zen Garden. It's pretty cool, right? You can learn a lot with CSS. There's so many. Sometimes I'll just go to CodePen. Like every day I'm in CodePen and I'm like, hey CodePen, and before I get to like look for things, if I just go to CodePen, I always see things like this. Before I create my own pen to start, I'm like, oh man, this is pretty cool. What's this? Like LineDroid. Oh, it's this hourglass. And I'm like, let me take a look at it. And it's all CSS. This is HTML and CSS. There's no JavaScript at all, and yet they're creating this crazy effect. Like, I don't know. I'd have to go here and take a look at what 129 lines of CSS get you, right? And all these little crazy, right? I don't know. Who's got time to do that? I don't have time to create an hourglass. It's not in my repertoire of things to do. All right, we're back here to the wonderful world of Flexbox. So when it comes to Flexbox, Flexbox has, so Flexbox has kind of two things. There's going to be a parent and then the parent will have children. And in this instance, we have 3 children, right? So I'll just put 3 little boxes here. And so those represent the children. And both of them can have different Flexbox properties. You start this kind of great Flexbox machine by whatever the parent element is, we give it a display property of Flex. The Flexbox? Almost forgot. Let me take a look and just see. Display flex, yeah, display flex. So the container is the thing, right? Is that the parent in this case? Yes, Joe, it's the parent. Well, thank you, everyone. That's very, very kind of you. Yes, display flex. Look what happened. What happened to those elements? What do those elements act like now? Inline block, right? They're taking up the full, well, they're acting like it, right? So I'm going to do this just to test case. That's it. I'm going to get rid of this just to see what a fully inline block element would act like. Display inline block. So I'm giving it to all. All right. So they don't necessarily act fully like an inline block. An inline block is like just the size of the content. They sit next to each other, right? Clearly, these elements are acting a little bit differently than that and are taking up the full height and only the width of their content. And that's flexbox, right? So when you turn on flexbox, the elements go horizontal to one another. They sit next to each other, like inline does. So they have this inline thing that they're doing, right? Awesome. We can play with these elements now and move them and do things like this. So if I want to move all the elements to the middle, I want to take them from here and put them here. There's a property called justify content, and I'm going to say center. It's easy. Center the elements, right? The properties that we're going to be working with are going to be things like there's 3 pretty key properties that we're going to be working with. I'm just going to move the children here. We have display flex. I'm going to have justify content. And there's several properties here. And then there's going to be another one called align items. Okay? I'm putting these things on different because we're going to have display flex is the thing. That's what turns it on. This is like flipping the machine, flexbox is on, and then I have values here like center. We just saw that I could center these things, right? Now watch this. Here's a little bit of magic. We just did center. Awesome. What if I did here, justify content, get a load of this. Space between. What? It really gets fun playing with Flexbox. So what Flexbox does is it takes the available space and it makes a decision. And it's like, hey, you want to put space? What do you want to do with this extra space? And you're like, I want you to take the space and I want you to divide it equally and put it between the elements. And so it's like, sweet, we got space between. Okay, that's one property, right? One value. What about this one? Space around. Oh man, this game gets better. Okay. We have all the problems. I'm not gonna, I feel like I'm just gonna go through all of them, but I could do flex end. They natively have flex start. Yeah.
Can you, with the justify content, can you like set parameters for like how far they are?
No. It's just like that's the way that this is Flexbox taking control. I mean, the fact that you can do it is amazing, and now it's just like, I want more. I don't think they've gotten to the more yet. They've given us this, and that's pretty solid what we can do.
Is there one that like staggers space between so it's like not equal between elements?
There is no other property for that. So if we take a look at display, and then I'm just going to go down to, say, the justify content. These are the only properties for justify content. There is space evenly, which takes all the space and divides. And we did flex start, which is the default flex end, center, space between, space around. And then space evenly just divides all the space evenly. but that's it. There's no other like ability to do that. Cool. So that's pretty cool that we can do all that, right? Awesome. So I'm gonna get rid of, maybe I'm gonna do center for now because I wanna maybe put them in the center. All right, here's the center. Awesome. Now I can give some of these boxes widths or widths. So what if I did the first of type and I'm like width, I don't know, 100 pixels. All right, I can give it a width. So the fact that it originally didn't have a width meant that it was the width of its content, but I can play around with it. I can give them widths, and then whatever free space is available now can be used to space between them, right? It's the free space that's available that if I went back up here and I said justify content, maybe if I did space evenly, right? It takes the free space and then just divides it evenly. Even though this thing is huge, it counts the free space. Awesome. So I gave that box a width of height. Now, for all the boxes, I'm going to give them a height of 50 pixels. All right. 50 pixels on the height. Now, what I'm doing here is this. Justify content works at this axis. This axis is the mean axis. Okay? It's the mean axis that we're working on. We're working on this, right? The horizontal. There is another axis. This axis is the cross axis. The cross axis works with align items. Okay? So with this now, this cross axis, I'm going to go back up to the container because it's the container, the parent. The parent is what manages the elements. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say align items, and I'm going to say center, and I just centered elements. It's a great way to center elements. If you had to do this with divs, it was a pain in the ass to center divs before flexbox came. Really pain in the ass to do. You had a bunch of different hacks. Which means if I kind of, comment out to justify evenly, oh no, I don't do that. What if I just, instead of doing evenly, I just want to do center. So you can see I have a perfect center of elements, which is cool. The fact that you can do this and take all the space and let flexbox do it for you, right? It's smart enough to do this for you, okay? I have align item center. Another one that we could do is, I don't know, I think it's a flex end. It'll anchor it to the bottom. Flex start is the default. It puts it on the top. I can also do stretch. Oh, and stretch them. Not this one, that was a property. Line items. Yeah, stretch. It won't stretch them because I've given them a height. Okay? The fact that I've given them all a height, if I remove the height, stretches the default. Okay? So I think if I change this to maybe flex start, I don't know if it's going to do anything. Yeah. Flex start, without align items, the default property that's native to them is stretch. Until I include align items and make a clear indication of what I want to do, and flex ends, then I can move them around. I can do center, and now they're centered, right? Pretty cool tool, the fact that we can do all of this, okay? Sweet. We center, we align them, really cool properties that we can do here. I'm just going to comment these out for now and go back to this. What if I wanted my elements to behave like they were? I mean, I had them stacked, and I want them to go back to being stacked, but still have this ability to work with them. Well, there is a flex direction, and the default flex direction for this is row, because that's what they're in, right? So I could change it to be column, right? Is that, did I not spell it? Column, yeah. I could change it. And now they're kind of acting like they were originally, right? I think if I remove the width on this thing right here, you couldn't even tell. And you might ask me, like, why would you do this when they were doing that before? Because the child elements themselves have a whole slew of properties that I can play with now too, okay? This is just the parent managing stuff, right? Purple, okay? So here we had also things like center, right? We had stretch, which is the default. You have flex in, flex start, right? Lots of other properties. You can go to this guide. Baseline also. There's so many properties. It's going to take you a while to wrap your head around them. I'm not going to just show them to you without using them, right? So now that we know that we have this, right, as a tool, flex, why don't we apply flex outside of this little demo? Why don't we go back to our layouts? Because it's our layouts that we're going to be using flex. So let's, if we take a look at the design, right? Wasn't this what we wanted? Right? I want two elements that sit next to each other, right? Okay, well, let's take a look at our design. Are they sitting next to each other? No. How do I get them to sit next to each other? Display flex, right? You saw how when I turned them on, they sat next to each other, right? All right. If I take a look at the design, because it's important, where we turn this on, the parent element of the children we want to play with, that's where we turn display flex on, not just willy-nilly anywhere. So where is that thing that we want to turn it on? Where? What element here should we turn display flex on? Main. Because that contains the section and the article, right? Awesome. So I'm going to go down and let's see on line 59, at least in mine, I'm going to say display flex. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. Oh, we don't have container. You're absolutely right. So I must have did this without adding a container. Oh, okay. So what I want to do is add a class of container in here. I forgot to add it. So I'm going to put a container around this. So if I do dot container, I'm just going to surround this with a container. I'm just going to take that, do this. I'm going to show you how to tidy it up. But all I did was put a div class container here, cut the ending, put it over here, and what you're going to see is like the HTML looks a little messed up, right? Things aren't nested inside of each other. So you see this little drop down here? This drop down? If I tidy my HTML, look what happens. Boink, does it for us. So anytime you like mess up the HTML here, and you're just like, oh, I gotta tab this, don't do anything extra, go to the thing and do the thing. Okay? So we did it. Awesome. Good class container. All right. So I turned on flex on the container, right? Where's my container? Where's my div? Oh, here. I'm going to do on the main here. We did display flex on the main. Okay. I think 100%. Okay. Now, the height of the container isn't really taking up the full height, it looks like, right? So I'm just gonna investigate. I'm gonna go. Hold on one second. All right. Just want to take a look and see why it's not. I don't know why this is acting this way. Taking up won't go. Oh, that's because this thing needs to go. Where's this thing? Down here, move this down. Here we go. So I'm going to take a look and see. Like here is my container. Here's my header. Here's my main. Here's my footer. My main has a section in it. That section doesn't look like it has any what? What's missing from the section? So these two properties right here, this one represents what? Width and height. So for right now, it doesn't have any width, but it has a height. And so I'm going to go to the article. What does the article have? No width, but it has a height, right? Okay. So we would manually have to go here and possibly like start adding widths and heights to get these things where we want them to go, because they don't necessarily have a width and a height for this particular thing, right? So we have our section here, right? We have our container main, right? And inside of our container, once again, we have a section. And I think here, this is kind of off because I have a section here when we probably want to precede this section with a main, right? That's just the structure, main section. So div layout 1, main section. And what I would do just to keep everything nice and, this is so annoying with this thing here, is I would move this and put it below this, okay? I made a last minute design decision, and that means that some of this is just out of sync with how I rebuilt it the last time. So just one or two small changes and we're back where we need to be, okay? So I have this section. Okay. How do we get these things to have a width? Right? I mean, last time we turned display flex, the things had something inside them. Look if I give this thing some content. Watch this. If I go up here and I'm like, section. There we go. I give this article. Well, there we go. Right? Are these behaving like display children? All right, so let's go back to this. I'm going to get rid of the flex direction column. See how these elements behave. Are these elements behaving the same way? Right? These elements were once again, stacked on top of each other in the HTML. The minute I turned on flex, they turned into this. Are they doing the same thing here, right? They're sitting next to each other, and unless we give them some sort of width property, they're not going to be any larger than what they are. So you would literally have to go to the section and give it a width. Maybe say, I don't know, width 80% or something. Boom. Awesome. Go to the article and say width 20%. Boom. And now we have some of the design, right? Just showing you, right? This is layout, yeah. Whatever the container has a certain width. And so this is 80% of whatever space is inside of this. Take 80% of that. And then whatever left is obviously just 20%. And that's what we're deeming is that. Also, the container itself, right, isn't taking up the full height. What do you think we should set the height to be? 100%? Doesn't really change anything though, right? I think the height would need to be either a hard-coded height, or we'd have to do something else, because we change it to be height. Maybe it is the full height. Let me take a look. Is it the full height? We're just not seeing the effects of something. So if I go container here, look, it is the full container. The container is exactly the height that we want it to be. It's just the elements inside aren't. Like, so this section needs to have a greater height to it, right? So here in this section, we have a width, but maybe we should also give it a height of 80%. Let me see, if I gave it 80%, No, that doesn't work because now it's 80% of what? Did I change that? It's not even. Look, it's kind of wild. It doesn't do what we want. What I think we need to do is go to mean and do a height of, I don't know, 80%. Let's see if this works. All right, there we go. Once again, doing these layouts isn't easy. And you're going to have to work through this because, in all honesty, when you get to doing your project and laying out your stuff, you're going to have the same challenges here. It's not going to be like 100% easy to do. Okay. And now if we went to the section, and now if I said height 80%, should go all the way down, right? So maybe height 100% now. Boom, we go, same thing with the article. Height 100%. All right, we have that layout, right? This layout is similar to what we want without the spacing in between, right? For this particular one, there's like spaces in between. I'm just trying to get something to work. That's really what. I'd be happy with this. I'd be like, I got this. And like, I'll move on to the next layout. We can go do something else, okay? So one thing that we didn't do yet, we did the parent, right? We did this thing with the parent. The other thing that we kind of want to do now, let me just see here, is I'm going to go back to our original. I just wanted to set that. I wanted to do one. I don't really want to play this game with these widths and heights. I was just showing you, you turn display flex on the parent, we can adjust and we can make things work. But I'm going to go back to this design. I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to the flexbox design. All right, we have flex, display flex. Okay. I want to touch the children now and play with the children. Okay? So here's our box, and the property that we can set on the child element is this, flex, and if I do 1, look what happened. What just happened? They took up the full width, right? With only 2 flexbox properties, display flex, which made them sit horizontal, and turning on flex 1 told this thing to take up the available free space and take that available free space. So all of them were like, oh, you're flex 1 and you're flex 1 and I'm flex 1? Awesome. Let's go ahead and tell the parent, hey, give us all free space and I'm going to take a chunk, you're going to take a chunk, they're going to take a chunk, and we're all taking our chunk of free space, right? That's what the flex 1 does there. If I do this, I'm going to take the flex 1 from the box and I'm going to put it on the first of type. Let's just see how that affects it. What did it do now? Yeah, the free space goes to that box because the other 2 elements, and we haven't changed their flex property. We're just telling them like, I'm going to do whatever my parent told me to do and I'm not going to be unique because setting this on the child makes it a unique thing. Okay, well, this element can be like, you know what? I'm going to push back a little bit and I'm going to say flex 2. And it's so hard to like cover all these things because there's so many weird things happening. What happened? Yeah, box 2 is bigger than box 1, right? It's almost probably like twice whatever the free space, it's almost twice as big as it is right now, right? It's just a weird thing. So, I don't know, logic tells me if I do flex 3, you know, and I'm pushing away. So now this thing is 3 times the size of maybe that one. You see how these numbers, we can play with the widths? And that's kind of where I'm going. You see with the numbers, I can play with the widths of things, right? Which means when I go back to the layout, I don't want to do like width or heights. I want to do flex. That's what I want to do. I know this is a lot. It is fun. It's just, it takes a lot to wrap your head around. So I'm going to go back into layouts and I'm going to be like, okay, I turn flex on main. What if this section, what if I got rid of the width and the height here for this section? What if I just got rid of it? all right, still kind of acting a little strange. What if I do flex 1? What? That's great. Did it not just take up the full free space? It's kind of what we want. What's that? What if it didn't on yours? Okay, then I'd have to take a look, because then that means it's one of those things like if you're doing exactly what I'm doing, then it's going to work. So that must mean there must be some change that you didn't make. Because once again, I'm throwing a lot up here. I'm like doing a bunch of changes.
There's something space there.
What's that?
The blue box is empty space.
Yes, so this blue box is empty. And let's see if maybe we can give it, I don't know, the height isn't working here for this. Maybe I will do height just to see. Can I do 100%? We can do it, right? So without doing the width and managing the width itself. And here, what if I get rid of the width on the article and I say flex 1, what happens? They both want the space. So what if I go to this section and I say flex 2, pushes it over, right? If I say flex 3, pushes it over even more. Okay, that's yours. Right? So you're seeing how we can use these properties to kind of manage the space that's there and create the layout that we were looking for. Okay? Now, what if I didn't want the height here? Let me do this. I'm going to get rid of this height here on section. Right? How can I get the height? Maybe I'm going to try this. What did align items do here? Anybody remember we did center and we did stretch? What did stretch do? Yeah, did the vertical. So maybe on the parent, I do align items stretch. Let me see if this works. Stretch, does it? Nope. Oh, yeah. I'm surprised it's not working on this. I almost thought it should work on that. So let me check. I'm just taking a look at my settings here to see why section is not display flex. Yeah. So I'm not going to do stretch here. I'll just do 100%. I'll keep this at a height of 100%, and boom. Now we have something, right? What if I want to create now the white space between them? How do you push things away? Margin, right? So the section should push to the right? To push away from the article. So if I do margin right, margin right, I don't know, maybe 10 pixels, maybe. I push away. How do I push top and bottom to get away from the header and from this? What do you do? Where should I add the margin for that? Margin, 10 pixels, 0 pixels. Okay? So what I'm doing here is I'm pushing from here and I'm pushing from here. Now, this thing bleeds out, so we would have to fix that, right? And if main itself, since main itself is never really going to have color or presence, right? It's always the things inside of it that are going to be color. I would kind of go up to main. Do we have main here? If I got rid of light blue, you would have white here. And it looks like kind of what we're trying to achieve, right? Little space here, space here. It's not perfect, but it's kind of where we're trying to get at. Okay? So that means if I really wanted to control these elements also using flexbox, what would I need to do for the header and the footer if I wanted to control them as flex? What's their parent? What's the parent of, what's the parent of the header? What's the parent of the header? It's the same parent as the footer. It's the same parent as, well, take a look. What is it? Is it this thing? Is container the parent, right? Look, if I collapse this thing, everything's collapsed. So the container. So with the container here, we can do this. Display flex. Oh man, stuff's just acting crazy again, right? I'm going to try doing this now. Now that we did that, I'm going to say flex direction column. Oh, snap. Look at that. 2 settings, right? It's like magic. It's really hard to convey the power of this by just showing it without you practicing it. So what happened? So I'm going to do this. I'm going to get rid of flex direction column. What happened? It's like speechless. You're just like, flexbox is amazing. I don't understand it, but I love it. And I want to understand it even more, right? Yeah. It did what? Yes. So I changed column. I changed it to flex direction column to make them do what again? Stack on top of each other, right? Flex direction row is the default, which is that. If I do column, they stack, and now these elements are flex elements, and they are, everything is working now. It's not bleeding out. Remember how this screen was bleeding out? I'm allowing flex to control it. I know, it's a lot.
Can you make the screen, like, is it responsive?
No, the screen is, let me see, it's not responsive yet. We will get to responsive. We're not, I hard-coded the size of these things. That's why. So this thing is not responsive because I'm making it this size, and I want it to be that way. We'll get to responsive like in 2 weeks, we'll do responsive. I'm just trying to like wrap your head around this first before we start adding another layer, okay? I'm gonna save that as that solution, okay? Because I know it's 9:23. Your job, your homework at this point in time, based on what you learned with Flexbox, handful of things with Flexbox, right? Is to apply it to this as well as this. The other 2 layouts that are in here, 3-column layouts and the simple marketing layout, leverage what we did for this. Once again, it doesn't have to be perfect. There's a little bit more margin here than there. Who cares? It's okay the way it is. Okay, that's going to be your homework to work on these layouts. Okay, so let me just kind of quickly go through the homework here. So we're all on the same page with the homework. Okay. So I'm not going to say complete all 5 layouts. I'm going to say complete the 3 layouts. We did the first one. You have the other 2. But if you really love it and you want that extra challenge, remember that there is this layout. This is number 4, and this is number 5. A lot of people love this stuff. Come back on Tuesday, and they like hand in everything. So you're that person. You got all of that to do. There's also an article on grid versus Flexbox. Okay, read that article. Here's some popular navs created with Flexbox, so you can read up on things like Twitter, Facebook, GitHub, Medium. He takes those navs that you are well known seeing, and he builds them in Flexbox. And he has like icons here, add icons, he walks you through it. So it's a great article on just building navigations, popular navigations using Flexbox. There's this test your CSS thing. You can take a look at that. And then I have some bonuses. If you really want a challenge with design, and some of you do, there's this design image here. Okay? This design image is something that you could build out based on this starter code. Okay? You would have to structure out the content in and make it look like, if you really want that challenge. This is something that's going to be next week's homework, but we're going to be doing it for grid. So you will have to do that. So if you wanted to just get a hands-on using flexbox and try to do it, play around with it. I really want you to do the layouts though. These other layouts are the things I want you to focus in on. Okay? Once again, I only have the 2 additions. So that should take you some time. Okay. That's all I got. So exit tickets. I got the exit tickets. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me your stuff. I will try to answer them when I can, and I'll add the recording too. Also the recording tab I have as well. Yeah. What's that? Okay, shoot me your code pen and I'll shoot me your pen and I'll put, oh, you're still not added to the Trello, is it? Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, that's a problem, yes. I thought I did. Hold on. I'm going to do it right now. Let me make sure. All right. Oh, I missed. Oh, yeah, I did. Okay, that's right. Boop. All right, here you go. Boom. You should be at it now. Stop sharing. Meeting for all.